was to see the batch totals compared to basically the posted batch total versus the not reviewed batch total. And we basically realized when Mel and I were looking at this after the call that could be compared against the posted totals at the top here. So most of the time, I'm assuming the not reviewed filter will be one batch, like you'd be reviewing one at a time. And so you'll be able to see the total posted cost and posted units of that one batch compared to what's left to do from this summary line. So that column just basically felt pretty duplicate. The only time that it would be different up here is when you have multiple batches, which I've just shown in the example to show that it's possible, but it's probably not the normal use case. But if you are reviewing, if the vendor posts or sends multiple batches at once, then that's the only time that comparing this value to these would be maybe not so helpful, because this would be a total of all the posted batches or sent batches. So that's just, to kind of summarize those 3 lines. Then the only thing that changed with the all filter is we removed the sent date filter because someone brought up that sent date was needed in the detail screen. And we were looking at how we had it on the selector and realized that it actually didn't make sense to be showing on the selector, because technically, since we talked about how one participant service for 1 month could have 2 batches if they sent the first half of the month and then they sent the second half of the month, because maybe that's how they do their billing and they need to get paid sooner. Well, that would technically be 2 batches for 1 participant service month. And so then that means that one line right here could have 2 sent dates. So we realized that wasn't appropriate in this selector screen, and we moved that to the detail. So that's just summarizing those changes. Everything else with all the other filters, everybody was pretty much okay with, besides, like I said, getting rid of county and subbing in date of birth instead. So moving on to the verify filter. So when we were going through the not reviewed screen, it was brought up that that people would actually like to keep the verification process that we have. We did not realize that, and so we basically added that back in with this mock-up showing what that could be like. We kind of pictured it as just another filter in this list of all the filters that we went over last time, because it's kind of a systematic process of, not posted to then sending it, you're showing and not sent, to then needing to review it and not reviewed. And then after every bill has been reviewed in a batch, then the batch will show up under this verify filter. And so all that you'll do here is you would check that little checkbox next to the batch, and then click the verify button on the bottom left. And it's just kind of, one last look to make sure that everything that you've approved in the review look of things is appropriate. Oops, what if I messed something up? Then here's your last chance to click on that bill line, see the detail, change it quick, and then verify it. And then at that point, everything will be locked down. So until a batch is verified, you will be able to make edits on those approved values. And so that'll just help, make sure there's less mistakes and not have to fix them as bill edits down the line. I'm not sure if there's anything else to say here. Oh, we did the checkbox way too, just to, in case there were multiple batches that you had finished reviewing and you only wanted to verify one at a time. So if you wanted to verify everything in the view, you could just check this checkbox that's at the column level, and that'll check both batches, all batches that are in the view. And then when clicking verify, it would just put the same verify, time on all of that. So the questions here are, does this look okay? Do we have all the columns that you would want to see and all the, totals that you might want to see in this view? Or, is there something missing? And then on top of that, we we assume you would want to keep the exclude zero variance checkbox, but we didn't put it in the mock-up yet because we were wondering if you would prefer something that's a little bit further, like a filter that allows you to see just the rows where they're over authorized. So more units and, more cost was authorized than, was approved than what was authorized, or also an under authorized option where, wow, I'm realizing we said over authorized because it's saying you've approved more than you authorized. And then under authorized would be if you approved less units than was authorized. And then we'd have an all variant row, which would be the same as what you use now, the exclude zero variance. So that would just include any differences, positive or negative. But just having those options, if that would help, we'd love to know, and we could do that for you. But if not, we don't want to waste time, doing something extra that isn't really needed.
Earlier, when we were talking about the entering of the service lines and stuff, there was at least on my part, there was some question about how we would demonstrate that days may vary. How could this, if it could, how could this exclude, or the overs, the over authorized or under authorized? How might that work if a care plan was to allow for days to vary, or would it just functionally break?
So we have those new event types that are kind of like basically the ways that the ones you would use when the days are going to vary typically. So like there's the weekly anytime and monthly anytime and date anytime ones. And so if it was going to vary as much as like several days, and maybe you're saying, oh, here's 8 units that you're going to use within this week, then maybe you're doing the weekly anytime. And then in that sense, I think it would still just be totaled up like you would see here. For instance, like if this line was a date anytime and there were 10 units authorized, it doesn't matter what days they would happen on. It wouldn't, as long as you had 10, then you wouldn't have any difference. Is that what you're asking or no?
Sorry, I was muted. So I mean, for the way that we currently are using the calendar, we have the number of days. So let's say there's 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. We authorize 10 units each of those days. What I'm hearing is that now the system is going to allow us to authorize 30 units a week, but there's no way to have it be 3 10-unit days anytime during the week. Is that correct?
Like force them to only be able to use that interval of units. Is that what you mean?
So yeah, so they can use up to 10 units 3 days a week.
No, yeah, they could. The way with the new way, you could put 12 units one day and 8 and then 10, and we wouldn't stop you from that if that's
Okay.
I think what you're asking.
Okay.
And if that's not appropriate, then yeah, I guess it's just a little different, because if you did the date anytime, that just means it can be anytime on that date.
Yeah.
But it wouldn't be multiple days, and so it is a little different.
Yeah, the difficult thing for us is that we've placed a greater importance of not getting, or a greater importance on actual meeting the client. So if we have 3 days, we want the vendors to provide 3 days of service, not 30 units of service, whenever it behooves them. And so that's one of the things that we'll have to consider when it comes to our care plan managing.
Yeah. Thanks for bringing that to our attention. I think the only thing that I can think of right now, without going back, talk to Mel and think about this more is that you would have to write a note in the notes to vendor that, specifying kind of, hey, make sure that this is 3 visits,
Yeah.
just willy-nilly.
Yeah. And then it making, the difficult thing for that, I mean, that's most likely what I was thinking that we'd have to do. The trouble is then having that known to a data person, or being able to look at the data, finding that note and stuff. So
Yeah, an
it does
approval.
make it a little bit more difficult for us to program some things to say that yes, this does in fact allow for days to vary, but
Yeah.
we can look into that.
So I guess, yeah, you saying that out loud would be, just to say what you said, you would click, the data person would have to click on in the detail, the vendor note, see, oh, this was supposed to be 3 visits at least, and then not approve unless there was 3, or you know what I mean, not approve something that was 12 units and, or, the off thing, whatever that may be, and to look for that. But that's, with the current way we've planned things, that's the only thing we have set up so far.
Yeah. Um, yeah, because I think even the trouble would be if with whatever billing would, at the time of billing, our billing staff wouldn't know necessarily that there's supposed to be 3 days there, for them to approve. If they did 4 days or something, that's against what our care plan, against our care plan rules, and so that also adds another degree of difficulty.
Yeah, I think the only thing is they'd have to view the notes, but otherwise I don't know what to tell you on that. Melissa and I can talk about that later and see if we can think of any other better ideas. Do you guys have any thoughts though about the filter that I was talking about with the 3 options versus just having one that shows anytime there's differences? Is there a want or need for the version where there's more options, or no?
Emily, this is Cindy from Region 8. We're going to have all of that information available to us within the detailed portion of the screen, right?
Which information? Like the
Well,
go.
Go ahead.
I
Because
didn't know if you were going to
you
say
know that
the units difference and cost difference. That does not, I mean, that doesn't show in the detail. That we just show the authorized values, posted values, and approved values in the detail. So there's variance we have, but like you have now, but this level of, breaking down each bill of, what's positive and negative versus the same, that's just going to be here versus there's also reports like the variance report.
okay, I have to think about that. I did want to ask a question about the verify button.
Yes.
So in our lifetime currently in MISIS, we can have staff be human and forget to verify everything or forget that process. And so in the picture that I'm seeing, all I'm seeing is being at a particular vendor for verifying. Will there be a spot for biller
Yeah.
to have an overarching verify
Yes.
to look at?
Totally forgot to put the screenshot in here. I'm glad you brought that up. We'll put that in the synopsis. Mel pointed out that same thing. She was like, "Oh, what are you going to do if you forget for which vendor to verify?" And we came up with just a little, basically, summary on the dashboard, which I don't have a mock-up to show you, but basically, it'd be a list of all the batches that are ready to be verified for all vendors for your agency.
Week. Thank you.
Yep, good question. So if no one has, a need for the difference of over authorized and under authorized, then we're probably just going to end up putting the exclude zero variance checkbox back up. But if we hear from someone after the call, or you want to think about that a little bit and let us know, please do. Otherwise, we're going to default to doing what we did before. Okay. So reviewing months with multiple batches not reviewed. We talked about this last time, and you guys communicated that you would like to review one batch at a time. And so we're realizing, with that feedback, that we'll need to basically make sure when you click on someone that does have 2 batches that have been sent for one participant service month, that then we'd need to basically gray out the ones that aren't associated to the batch that you're currently reviewing. So in this example, I've got Mickey Mouse on here. You can see he is a part of 2 different batches. The green is the batch ID. I've just highlighted that to show you there's 2 different batches. And then I highlighted the Mickey Mouse, the first one, because that's what we're going to pretend that we've clicked on. And so if I've clicked on that row, then I should be only approving the bills related to Mickey Mouse and that first batch. And so if you look at the batch ID column, which I'm sure it's a little hard to see if we're not zoomed in too much, but you can see that the 2, 2, 3, 4, 6, 1, all those rows where stuff can be edited, like the invoice number, well, I should get to that. Ignore that for a second. Approved columns and the agent notes are editable in white because that's the batch that you're actually reviewing. And then oh no. Okay, wait, no, 1, 2. I thought I had the wrong number. I was like, oh, good. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 batch. That's the second batch that Mickey Mouse is a part of. Those ones are supposed to be styled where they're grayed out, and you can see that the default values for approving are empty and not auto-populated there because you're not going to be approving that at the same time. We'll talk more about that because I know there was some disagreement of whether we should have both units and cost per unit defaulted, but we'll get there. So that's just depicting how that would work. And then something else I wanted to note is, oh no, I think we have a separate section for invoice numbers. So we'll talk about that more later too. But so you can see how the previous month is grayed out like we do now. That's not different. And then the new part is, like I just said, the bills from different batches are also grayed out and not editable. I think that's it really for this section. It's just wanted to show you guys what that would look like. Are there any questions on this? Okay. Then in that same picture, you can see there's a save and next button. We were talking about arrows in the last call, and then we got to thinking through the use cases a little bit more and realized a save and next and save and exit button felt like a little bit more user friendly. So the way this would work is if you had clicked on Mickey Mouse, then if you clicked save and next when you were done, then the next person that would come up is the Emily Wee, because that's the next person in that batch in the list. And then if you were done with that and you click save and next, since you didn't actually start with Jackie Buck, she would still be left. And so then it would go to Jackie Buck. And then at that point, if all the bills in the batch are reviewed, which in this example, I only made 3 participant service is in the one batch just to make an easy example. So then since everything would be done, the save and next button would either be hidden or disabled, and then just save and exit would be available. And so then you would go back to that selector screen and you could start on the next batch. And so then you could click on Jack All or Mickey Mouse of the second batch and start reviewing that. But that way, we didn't want the save and next button to keep taking you through multiple batches because we were worried you would, not realize that you're in another batch and then maybe give the wrong invoice number and assign, same invoice number to a different batch when you didn't really mean to. And so then also at any time when you are reviewing one batch and you don't want to finish, like maybe you get halfway through, you can just save and exit. It'll save everything that you've done so far and you can just pick back up with it at a later time and date. So that's, how we picture that to work. I don't think that there's anything too crazy with that, but if there's any questions, please go ahead.
Hey, this is John from Region 4 again. In vendor billing, the current model that we have, it has the notes field up at the top when you're reviewing a participant's invoiced services. Is that going to be something that's going to be replicated on the future builds?
Yes. Sorry. I cut that top part out to make so you could see these columns a little better. I think it's maybe down below in a different screenshot. Oh yeah, it's in the SE details, and we'll get to that. Notes will still be there, but if you scroll down, there's another screenshot that has the top part, and next to it there's a blue text that says SE details, and the notes will be lumped into that in the summary. Okay. So back to change date. So basically this functionality is there for when the participant care setting status isn't home, because you need to bill when they're home. And so we put this functionality here so that in case something happened where it fell on a date that the participant wasn't home, like a meal delivery service or something, and you needed to just change the date for billing purposes, then that's why we have this feature. And so we know that we will still need, we think we will still need this, but I guess we kind of wanted to talk about it. Right now, whenever you change the date of service, you can only change it to days where other services aren't billed, just because that's what vendor billing could handle. And now if we still need it, we'll need to do that same thing, but only if it's the exact same service, like down to the custom service. But if it was a different custom service, if you had like waiver and not waiver, or chocolate and vanilla for liquid supplements or something, like, then you could change it to any day that the same custom service wasn't used. And so there's just a little change in how we would need to do that. But overall, I guess I wanted to just ask, is this functionality still needed or used, or not?
Yes, I think we would still need to allow for this.
Okay, thank you.
I agree with that. We still need it.
Okay. Great. Well, then it'll basically work the same, but that minor difference that you can actually basically move it to more days than before, but custom service wasn't around. So that's, I guess, new. So the second screenshot is just showing where you click now to do that. It'll look very similar in the new 4.1 build as well, where we have that date column, and we'll just make it a link and put it in the same place so that it's not confusing. Okay. The new agent post and approve process, we talked about this on the last call. I just wanted to refresh because everything's new. So the plan was to auto-populate the posted values with the authorized values. We suggested both units and costs, and then the agent would be able to just update whatever the posted values, update the posted values, because this is talking about when you guys are posting for vendors, to whatever they need to be, and same with the approved values. And then you would be able to save and do both posting and approving in one go, since you're doing it for the vendors. And so as part of this process, that's when we started talking about defaulting both posted units and posted cost per unit, just because we were trying to make it easy for you guys. And we wanted to do the same thing for whatever we did for you, for vendors, to make the app more consistent. But then that rose some questions and worry about vendors basically kind of gaming the system and or having more issues with it being erroneous and then having to deal with that later on. Some people were really for it, saying that'd be great, save them a lot of time. And we kind of are just in the middle. Either way is fine. But with people not agreeing, we might have to just do an email survey or something and go with a majority, unless, you guys wanted to talk about the pros and cons a little bit more and agree amongst yourselves. We tried to we had some people email us after the call and give us some more cons for doing it. And so Mel actually wrote out this nice little pro and cons list, debating the options. And so the options are, one is do what we do today. Same thing, just default cost per unit for both agents and vendor users. Option 2 is the one we suggested, where you would default units and cost per unit for both agents and vendors. And that's where we have the pros and cons for below. Then there's a third option we could do, where we could give a button that at least allows you guys to default the units and then keep just defaulting cost per unit for agents and vendors. So that way, the third option is you guys can do it, but vendors can't, essentially. So I kind of want to just open up the floor if anyone wants to talk about that right now, right here. If not, we'll probably end up maybe sending out a survey or something.
Emily?
Yeah.
What about a fourth option, something like possibly giving agents the autonomy to set something up in vendor view where we're able to vendor by vendor choose who we give the default cost units to populate for?
I mean, that's definitely something that we're capable of doing if that's something that everyone agrees with. Basically, the permission that we would give to agent users, we could make for vendor users instead and just give it to all agents. And then the permission instead would be for the vendors, but that would have to be something that not everyone agrees with, but the majority, obviously, if that.
I'm just thinking that might be, it would definitely solve the issue where, some of us want to go that way and some of us don't. But then even, within our agency, I think it would be beneficial for some vendors, but even there's some services that I wouldn't want populated, like transportation and things like that would, be a problem.
Well, you could limit that based on vendor, what services they provide, but we wouldn't do it at the service level, just to be completely clear.
Okay. Just a thought.
Yeah, it's a good idea.
Emily?
Yep.
This is Cindy from Region 8. I was one of the individuals who sent an email after the fact. I was unable to attend last month's design call, and I do have concerns about auto-populating the care plan units for the reasons Melissa really did a good job of putting the cons out there. I think when a vendor is actually entering information in from employees' timesheets, I think it's easier for a biller just to decide, what is it I'm doing? Am I just entering information in, or do I have to look at each line because now it's populated with something versus what I might be putting in? And so in our area, we do have a difficult time filling care plans. So the majority of our line items would be changed, are changed. And so that's, I'm going to say that probably the number one compelling reason that we think there's going to be more errors, because right now our agency doesn't have any audit issues when our staff goes out to audit providers. So we think what's in place is actually excellent. We're actually concerned that there will be just human error as a result of putting that information in, and it will result in more work for the person or persons at your agency that have to work with the OIG templates. And so while fraud in its intent probably isn't actually what would occur, it would just be human error, but the real possibility of more information having to be collected on the OIG quarterly templates is going to be real if we move that forward, is our belief.
Okay. Thanks for sharing that.
And I share those concerns as well. I think making it easier for the vendors to maybe not fraudulently, but errantly, or just not doing their best diligence to make sure that the accurate values are in there. The OIG report is a ridiculous document in itself. I can only imagine how much more exacerbated it would be at time of auditing when we find these incorrect entries.
Thanks. Are you guys, would you be against then the option 4 that was brought up, that you basically would just not give your that permission to the vendors that you're serving or that are serving you?
If it was my call to make, I would make it so that no vendor would have the ability to have units defaulted entry. Yeah, I mean, so if it was there, I would turn it off.
You would just turn, yeah.
This is Cindy, and I agree with John. I would not give any vendor that option.
Are there agencies though that would like the ability to give their vendors the option that would use the permission? Still, after hearing all these cons, I guess I know there was last time, but I just kind of want to check in on that again then.
This is Region 10, and we have a couple of vendors that will only deal with us at a specialized rate, and they never seem to have the same rate per client. So in that situation, that would be one vendor where I would turn it on for us, just because it's impossible for us to know what rate was agreed upon. And with the default rates, it's just difficult to keep track of it all.
So wait, you're saying you would use it or wouldn't? Like you
I
would
would use it for certain vendors that we do have that are charging different rates for different clients.
Okay, those are the ones you'd want to turn it. You wouldn't want the defaults, right?
Right. Yeah,
Okay,
I'm sorry
yeah,
if I'm
sorry.
speaking. Yeah, sorry.
No, you're good.
Region 6 has the same scenario. The self-determination program rates vary.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that one too.
So, Emily, this is Cindy. I think today, currently, the rates do show, but not the units. Is that correct?
Correct. Yep.
So I would be okay with having the unit rates show. I just don't want the units to show. And so I think we were talking about the options. I'm sorry. Option 1 would be what we would like it to see. So I think the couple of agencies who just brought information forward are, I think, just talking about the unit rates only. So I just want to have them come back and say option 1 works for them.
Yep, you're right. So I guess what I'm trying to debate and make sure that's understood is like the option 3 versus the even option 4 that we talked about, where option 3 is, so if 2 is not going to work, which it sounds like it's not going to work for everyone. So that's probably out of the question. But option 3 is so that you guys as agent users could still at least default the units, because if you're posting for your vendors and you don't want to enter them all and you trust yourself because you're doing it, then you might want that option. If not, and you're just going to basically enter each one hand by hand anyway, so that you can look at, you know, like what's on the timesheets and have that, oh, it's here, now it's here, you know, however that system, however your system is that you want to enter it, then that's fine. Then we will literally just do option one. That's the easiest for us. But we didn't want to take away the ability, at least for you, to do it. So that's why we had the option 3 that could be a permission for just you, for agent users. But then someone brought up option 4 that's not on the design call agenda, which would instead be, oh, give it to basically agents and vendors for cost per unit, and then either also always give units to default, just units for agent users, and then allow each agency to decide which vendors could do units defaulted as well, which would be, you know, the ones that you're kind of worried about for all these inaccuracies or errors and etc. Then don't give it to them, but give it to ones that, oh, this would really help them. And if it's not going to be where any agencies are giving it to any vendors, then we definitely don't want to do that. So I'm trying to hear, with considering all these pros and cons, where people are at now. And I know this is a little bit confusing talking about cost per unit and unit and a lot of the same words. So please let me know if I need to re-clarify anything.
This is Stacy at Senior Resources. I brought up option 4, and the instances where I could see using that would specifically be us posting our T2022 units every month, which are extremely time consuming. And that would definitely make an efficiency and save us time. And also I could see us using it for posting supplements, or even giving that permission to our vendors where they're going in and posting 30 units or 60 units of supplements every month. That's something where I trust our vendors that they could handle that. I don't see an issue with that.
Thanks for the specific examples. That's helpful. Does anyone else have any specific examples of where they would let their vendors do it? Because if there are really few, I think we're not going to go that route.
Well, it was brought up about, I'm sorry, this is Liz from Region 10, and it was brought up about the self-determination clients or aides that everybody has a rate every month. And for them, we do have to depend on the fiscal intermediaries to post the correct amount. We really don't know from bill to bill whether it's the right amount or not, but we do have to depend on them to do it correctly.
Thank you. So I guess what I'm hearing, and we can maybe summarize this up again still with a survey between option 1 maybe and option 3, is that, but I'm hearing that it doesn't seem like it's a huge need to do the defaulting of units for vendors, not enough where we would want to do a separate permission if there's only a few examples of where it would be helpful, but that it would be nice to have the ability for you guys, agent users, when you're posting for them, to at least have that ability. And so maybe it's just a debate between option 1 and option 3, I think. But if anyone disagrees, please let us know soon, so we can kind of get this summarized up and at least send an email about this if we do need to keep going back and forth, because I'm hearing different things and I'm just not sure.
This is John from Region 4 again. And just to be certain, when we're saying default cost per unit, are we saying that the services default unit, or like for SD, you know, those rates are all over the place? Will it pull what I know is now is the template rate? Like, will it pull that client's specific service rate And that's what we mean by default cost per unit, or
No, it'll be like the rate, the default rate from the vendor rates. So whatever's established.
No, I'm sorry. No,
What?
it wouldn't. It'd be from the service schedule, the event, whatever the event holds. Sorry, I've lost my voice a little bit.
Yeah.
So,
Well, if it's overridden, but that's just
yes,
the vendor
that's
rate.
what he's asking. So if it's overridden by the default, then
Okay,
it would be
okay.
the events.
yeah, like so SD would be an example of where we would override that rate.
Yeah. Yeah.
And each client would be then unique, or somewhat unique. So as long as it shows that event default cost. Okay,
Yeah. Yep. Sorry. You're right.
thanks.
Okay. Well, I'm going to move on for now. So this is remove care setting column. Oh, add sent date. Okay. So you can't see care setting status in this mock-up anymore because we mocked it up to show what it could be. We were basically wondering if it would be okay if we remove that column, since it's almost always home and it takes up a lot of space, and this is just such a crowded screen. And so we're thinking that if we remove that and then instead just showed a pop-up that as soon as you come into a specific bill detail for a person that has any dates that they weren't at home, we would show a pop-up and say, hey, FYI, Mickey Mouse was not at home from date so-and-so to this date, whatever. And so that'd be right in your face to make sure that you're aware. But then if you also needed it later on and wanted to double check something of what those dates were, if you would click on status details, which in the mock-up is right next to the participant's name, right next to Mickey Mouse, then that would be a pop-up that has two summaries. The program status, which we already show right now, that's what it is currently labeled in vendor view or vendor billing. And then now it would also have care setting status summary and show the dates, just like you see in Compass Navigator when you click on the status and you can see all those different summaries. It would be like that for program status and care setting status. And so that's where you would go find the summary of the care setting status after you've seen that initial pop-up. There won't be a pop-up though if they're at home the whole time. Then you would just go to the status details if you wanted to see that they're home the whole time. I guess to us it makes sense because most of the time they are home, and then when they're not, seems like that would cover it. But we wanted to make sure that I guess wasn't going to create any problems or something that we're not thinking of with you guys' processes. So that's one thing. I guess I'll keep going and let you guys have questions or talk at the end. So then instead I swapped out invoice number right there. And then we talked about sent date. I'll talk more about invoice number. I just wanted to say sent date really quick. Sent date was also requested. There's not really a good place to add another date column because it's just so full that we're thinking sent dates matched up with batch ID, that on a hover, you could just hover over the batch ID for each row and then be able to see the sent date, which it would be the same for almost, all the batch. But then if there's multiple batches, then you could see the difference when you hover. Then, so back to invoice number. So invoice number we realized was needed at each bill level because of the issue where there could be multiple batches for one participant service month. And right now you assign the invoice number in the top right, and it just goes to all the bills that you're reviewing at once. And that's still going to be the same process when you're reviewing because of how we talked about earlier, how you will only review one batch at a time. And so you can see this is the same example as above where the other batch is grayed out. And so if you were in the process of reviewing, then you would enter the invoice number, it wouldn't be grayed out, and it would be assigned to all the bills that are in the batch that you're reviewing. So that's the same as how it is now. And then if you click save and next, the invoice number will just keep staying up there. So you could keep assigning the same invoice number to each of the bills in the batch, but you obviously have the option to change it if needed. And so that's just like how you do now. But then this invoice number column was important to have for bill edits, specifically realizing going back, oh no, I need to change these bills and give them a different invoice number because I accidentally messed up the number, and I need to change it. Well, we realized we couldn't just change it at the top level because of that whole issue of having multiple batches in one participant service month. So if you messed up the invoice number and you need to go back and change it, you could, one, do it with, a mass edit change, but also if it was just you wanted to do it one bill level, you could go in and change this 44773 and change it to 44771, or, whatever it was supposed to be. So that is how we were thinking to handle invoice number edits after they have been verified and approved and whatnot, and you can't just change it anymore because they're locked down. So that's how we do that. What else am I missing from here? Oh, just that if you guys were going to give us the feedback that you would like to still keep the care setting status column, then the only way that you would be able to change invoice number after the fact would be using the mass edit tool, which we haven't really revisited yet, but you have now. So it'd be another version of that, but in 4.1. So I think that's everything. Does anyone have any comments or feedback?
Hi, Emily. This is Sherry from Region 4. So the only way to see the status, could you go over that again, is to...
Yes. So when you go, if they were home the whole month that you're looking at for that person batch, then the only way to see the care setting status would be to click on the link that's mocked up that says status details. It's next to the participant name, and that would bring up a pop-up that would show a summary of the care setting status, like which dates they were where, that we have from the episode. And then in that, we renamed it to be status details because it would also include a program status summary as well. Then if they did have a date that was where they weren't at home, or several dates, as soon as you go in, we would show a little pop-up that says, hey, just so you know, this participant was not at home these dates. And then you'd say, okay. And then you could go in and make sure that you pay attention to that for those dates, and you've just been shown what they were. But then you could also click on status details still, see the pop-up, see the dates if you forget what you just saw, because you're reviewing and doing a million things. But they wouldn't show at each line.
Would it show the start and stop dates of that not at home setting?
Yes.
Emily, we got 3B in Region 6 want to see the care setting status.
Column still.
Correct.
And this is Sherry from Region 4. I'd also still like to see them on there. It makes billing process much faster.
Okay. Would everyone with the invoice number issue of editing be okay with then just changing that using the mass edit tool? Just knowing that, because we just don't have the room.
That would be fine with me.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that would be appropriate fix. I like having the visual cue for care setting
Yeah.
when looking through that. And I think that will help.
Okay, so prefer care setting status right in the row, fine with the mass edit for fixing invoice number. Just writing that down. Okay. That's fine with us. Set, reset, clear buttons. I guess I thought I was rewatching the video since I was on vacation, and I thought there was still some confusion as to what we wanted to do. So I thought we'd just go through that again. So the units and cost per unit set buttons we would keep. Those would be where you could click on the rows you wanted to affect the change. So those check boxes, and they would be setting the posted units and posted cost per unit. So just want to be clear that maybe we would rename those. And so instead of it just being units, maybe we'd say posted, so it's clear which columns that you're affecting. And since in the bill detail, there's authorized, posted, and approved, those would only be used during post. And it'd just be a way to like change everything. If, for instance, you didn't have the right self-determination values and you wanted to, the vendor needs to go change them to whatever they have, then it's just an easier way than typing it in each row. Or I'm sure there's a million other examples of when you might need to use those. Then on top of that, we are hearing that we needed still the clear posted values, which would be to clear both rows and just not zero them out, but like just clear the number out completely, because maybe maybe you're only doing the first half of the month, or the service didn't actually happen on that day and you want to put it on the day that it really did. So that's what clear posted values would be. And then there's reset. And reset, when we were talking, Melissa and I were like, is that really needed? And maybe it is, but reset would only be used when you've changed a value. So say the default was $4 and 4 units, and you've changed it to 8. And then you realize that you actually didn't want to change it, and you could click reset and it would reset back to the default values. But after our discussion above, if we're only defaulting cost per unit, it would literally only reset cost per unit to whatever the default rate is. And so I don't know, it was just kind of, when we were talking it through, like, wow, that has a very limited functionality to have its own whole column on this page, because this would only be during the posting process. And so we were just wondering if that's something that's actually valuable to you, or not. I think the one example of when we could think of when it would be valuable is if maybe there's only one service that month and you've changed it and now you don't know what the default rate is, and the only way to get it back is to click the reset button. That was our only use case that we were like, okay, this would be helpful. Otherwise, you would just know what the default rates are by looking at the other days of that stuff was billed, and then you just change it by editing it. So I guess it's just kind of a minor thing, but it was something that we thought would help clear up some real estate if it wasn't needed, or if you didn't see yourself using it. If everyone's indifferent too, that's fine, but just tell me.
This is Cindy from Region 8. I think I'm indifferent about it unless you can give me more compelling reasons. I do have a question for you, because this is also new. And I'm sure we made decisions on things previously, but I'm looking at I'm not on Google, so I'm on the phone and I'm following along with my agenda. So I'm looking at the Mickey Mouse remove care setting column and add sent date picture. And there's a custom service field. And I'm wondering if you can go into detail and explain really what that is for us and provides for us. Because I'm wondering if that isn't necessary, if the invoice number field could be there in its stead, as well as, we're talking about having the care setting status be there.
I do think, well, we need custom service. It's the new field where you can delineate a service combo a little further based on your own specific needs. So if there was one custom service combo and there's no additional modifiers or standard remarks that help delineate like different rates, essentially, then you could use that to set up. Basically, it's like the fourth column in vendor rates, where you can say, oh, this one, our bad example is vanilla versus chocolate. And let's say that there's two different rates for the vanilla insure versus the chocolate insure. And if one's $1 and the other's $2, it was a way for you guys to program that in rates and then, trickle down through the service schedule. So you said, oh, this month they're getting vanilla, next month they're getting chocolate, it would just automatically be set up. You wouldn't have to override the rates at all to change those to indicate those differences. And there's other people were talking about maybe using it for waiver and non-waiver and just like some different things that you guys have different rates for that aren't covered via the service combo. And so that's what the custom service is all about and where it comes from. And so by the time you get to billing, we have to show somewhere those differences. And so the service the service combo is, the community. Well, my words just right now.
You're I had to hear that again. So thank you. Are we going to be able to hover over that field to have more information available?
Well, you would just see the rest of the name. So the custom service is named by you guys in the agent specific data. So
Okay, thanks.
Okay.
You're just giving me, I don't know what's real and what's not real. And so I'm just trying to play through this in my mind. So I apologize.
Oh no, it's good. You always have good good feedback. So I'd rather, help clarify that now than not. So if everyone's kind of indifferent, Mel, what do we want to do with reset? We don't really care that much either. It was just
I was just thinking about it more, and I think it was because you couldn't cancel. Everything saved instantaneously, it currently does. And now we have the cancel, so it doesn't save it. So I think we kind of don't need it.
okay. She's saying man, you sound bad. But that if you did change it and you wanted to go back to whatever the default value was, you could just click cancel and come right back in and the default would be there. So if no one really cares, I think we're going to get rid of reset because it just has so little value to have a whole column on this page. Okay. Does this call go to 11 or 11:30? I can't remember.
11:30.
Okay. Gosh. Like the reaper's coming for you. Okay. So we have time. We're going to keep going through. Non-services is next. So this is basically our plan to deal with the fact that non-services are at the service event level and they could be, or we could have multiple service events scheduled to one day. And so knowing which being able to map up non-services to one row in billing is just not gonna, it won't match up because if there's multiple service events for the one day, they'll show in one line, as long as everything else matches up. It's the same custom service, same service combo. We're just going to combine those units and show the total units on that day. But really there could be two non-services for that day. And maybe one of them's a partial, there's not a really good way of matching up the non-service within the bill detail area. So then we got to talking more and we are realizing too that non-services really change the authorized values for both participant and vendor reasons with the new 4.1 billing because we talked about, sorry, I'm losing my train of thought here. Before, only participant ones would change the plan of care basically because they decided they didn't need the service or it was their reason versus if it was vendor that just didn't show up, the participant was still expecting 4, then that was supposed to still show. Why can't I remember why it needs to apply for both participant and vendor reasons?
We just decided to handle change of planned stuff at a reporting level and not in here, since they still will bill a smaller amount, and it just makes life easier across the board.
Okay, so the consistency, right? Okay, so we're gonna do it in the reports. I'm sorry, I'm not remembering this. It's been a little while.
Well, and it also came into play because of the units not provided being partial and stuff now too.
Mm. And so I guess we were thinking that instead of vendors marking or adding non-services and you guys adding non-services in the bill detail, that would be just done ahead of time. And then we started talking to a couple of agencies about this, and then because we were trying to see the feasibility of just vendors letting you guys know to add the non-services in the calendar, and adding all of them. And then they were like, no, there's too many instances where a vendor needs to be able to add it when they're posting. And so we realized we still need the vendors to be able to add it somewhere. And if we can't do it in bill detail, where are we going to do this? And so we were thinking that we would give the vendors a read-only view of the service schedule, which is the same information that they can see in billing, only it's just presented in a nice calendar. And then let them add non-services the same way that we would allow you to. So by doing that, you just click on the service event, you can click on the reason of the non-service, and then you just say how many units weren't provided, basically, of the total, and you can add a little note if needed. And so that's how we had planned for you guys to do it. And we're like, oh, this is kind of nice because it's streamlined. They're seeing the same thing as you are, and just kind of makes it easier. But then we realized that you might not agree with when a vendor adds a non-service versus when you do it. And right now in billing, you can kind of control that by what you approve because it's in the bill detail. And so since this wouldn't be in the bill detail, we realized we needed to add approve non-service button. So any non-services that were added by vendor users, you guys would get a little notification that says, hey, there's non-services that need to be approved. And then you could go in and have a link to each one and then click the approve button or not. And if you didn't approve it, then you would just delete the non-service. And so it would come back off of the service event, and the service event would default to regular scheduling. And so that's what those three mock-ups are. It's showing what the non-service pop-up on ad looks like for both agent or vendors. If this is something that everyone's okay with, then you just click the non-service reason. You can add a little example of reason why or something, a little extra text, and then enter the units not provided, which defaults to the full units, but you can change it if it's a partial non-service. Then the second one is just showing how the pop-up would look like if a vendor added it. There'd be this approve button and the delete button. And for you guys only, they wouldn't be able to obviously approve their own non-services. Then the third one is showing what it looks like when it's actually been added, or then a vendor one is approved. And so then there's just the ability to edit it. So you could change the reason if you messed it up, change the units if you needed to make a change, and same with the memo field, and then save and cancel, of course. And then we still make delete non-service available to you agent users, so that, if there was a change down the line, you need to delete it, you can delete it. So I guess that's a question that's missing, is if you would want vendors to be able to delete non-services that they added after they've been approved, then we would need to do a little special something for that. If it'd be easier if they just only you guys could delete them. But if for some reason that's needed, we would need to do a little bit of special programming for that, because we would need to be able to tell which ones after the fact, after they're approved, which ones were still added by vendors versus you guys, because you wouldn't want them to delete the ones you've added, of course. So that's one thing. Then in the calendar, we have on the right, it was a long time ago, I'm just bringing this up to refresh, we talked about the styling for non-services, and it's that one that's on the 22nd that is red with the cancel sign. That's what it'll look like when you've added a non-service for you guys. But if the vendor added it, we thought we would show it in yellow, so you can see that, oh, this isn't approved yet. And then as soon as it's approved, then it would look like how it looks like when you guys add them, which is red. So that would just be kind of like a 2-stage visual indicator to also help with knowing that there's things that need to be approved. But like I said, we'll have a little notification that alerts you that there's stuff to be approved, since this would be at the service schedule level, which means you would have to actually be looking at a specific participant. So we'd need to sum that up like a dashboard type of feature. And then I'm just trying to think if there's anything more to talk about with this before we do questions. I think that's it. Is there anything else I'm not thinking of, Mel?
Not for the initial questions.
So are there any comments, thoughts, issues with this for everyone?
This is John with Region 4. When is the notice of non-service? When is this modification available to a vendor? Only when they're going to post, or could we make it a tool that, because right now what we use is they have to report it through vendor view message for us. It's quite a daunting task to convert that text data to actual care plan line data. Would this be something that we could instruct vendors that they need to visit this website and submit their NNS for these dates, 24 hours from the service not being provided?
Yeah, so as soon as you have service events added in the calendar, and the vendor's working has like a relationship with that participant, then I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mel, or anyone, I mean, Jackie or Beth, that then they would be able to have this view of the service schedule. So before they're posting, they could go, when it's happening, click on that event, add the non-service, and then it's there and it'll show up when you do get to posting already at that point. Right?
Right. They would have access to the same module you do to do all of your input of service schedule things like you do care plans today. And then, but they just would have access to do non-services in it, whereas you guys have everything.
Yeah, sorry.
They can do it at any time once you put in an authorization that they can access.
Like they won't be able to touch anything else, anything that's important. They just would be able to add the non-services and see the service schedule for them, for that participants that they're working with.
Is it possible for them to only enter an NNS when where a service exists? So like if that first week there on the 15, 17, is that two different services? Or I guess it's two different screenshots. But let's say we allow the days to vary. So the day that the non-service is for the 16th. Would they be able to put the 16th in place?
No.
Okay.
So remember, we don't have days may vary anymore. We have the different types. And so if it was the different type, the way that would be styled is there'd be one long line from the 19th to the 25th showing, hey, here's this weekly service event, and here's the units, blah, blah, blah. And then if you add a non-service, they would click on that and it would add it to the whole thing. And then in the notes, they would have to say what happened, essentially, the details.
Okay.
If it was, like how you were describing earlier with the 3 units, like, oh, hey, we didn't show up on Tuesday, blah, blah, blah. But like, that's the whole beauty, I thought, of the weekly anytime, is that they could have happened at any point within the week. But if it's just that they didn't come and didn't, deliver all the services, if there was 30 units and they only delivered 20, then that's when they would say, yeah, we didn't come on this day that we said we would, we missed the third day, or,
Mhm.
so they would be able to do that. Which was your original question. I was just explaining how. We think this is like actually better because it's a little easier to visually see for them too, of knowing of when they're putting these in, and then also that it is a little bit more immediate.
Yeah, I agree that this is visually better, and I think it actually is better for as far as accuracy goes. We just currently use, a system that, with the days and times may vary. I mean, that adds a layer of confusion and complication to our current process that we do lose a lot of flexibility in the way that the new care plans will be laid out for it. So it would just take some brainstorming as to how we want to make the idea of days may vary be something that we can capture through the data. So that way our data entry process is knows what's going on. It makes sense for any billing that we have to do, and then come auditing and stuff to make sure that our services that we've aligned and the bills that we've approved meet those auditing standards.
Gotcha.
Hi, this is Bonnie from Region 4. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Oh, thank you. So, and maybe this I should address to John. I'm not sure if I'm here in the meeting, so I figured I'd jump in. But so essentially, the vendors will be entering their own NNSs then into, if I'm getting this correctly.
Sorry, can you say that again? Someone was asking me about lunch.
Oh, sure. Sorry about that. The vendors will be essentially entering their own NNSs then
Yeah.
into.
You will still be able to. So like if the agent is used to doing that, or that's your process, then they still can and will. But vendors also would be able to, because we know that many vendors do that now. Not in the care plan now, but they do it in billing. And so that's the difference, is that they would be adding these into the service schedule, and it'd be able to be done in real time, basically.
Okay. So they're having that option.
And then Emily, to the yellow highlighted one, like you said, you were considering a dashboard for it, which I like that idea, that a vendor can enter a non-service, whereas they may label a particular experience a vendor issue when really it's they may label a participant issue when it's a vendor issue. Would it still stay yellow, or does it go red once it would be approved by our staff?
It go red, so it looked like normal once it's
Okay.
approved. You could fix that reason and then approve it.
Yeah.
Or maybe, they like did the incorrect units or something. It's just a way to double check the vendors.
And once it's red, can nothing be done to it then? I mean, it's.
No, you can still change things after it's red. You can still make edits.
Okay. It's just like a highlight showing that
That you still want to basically get a look at it. Like, hey, let's make sure this is actually okay. And then once you approve it, it'll basically look like you've added it now. And we let you edit the ones that you've added. Sorry, mixing up my words. And we also let you delete them.
Okay.
Emily, Brenda is asking, once the provider enters a non-service, can they edit what they have put in? Say a participant has 3 different shifts. 2 shifts need non-services.
3 different shifts and 2 shifts need non-services. So like if there's 3 service events, there's the morning, afternoon, and night, and you have those all in the calendar, you can add non-services just to the morning and night if those are the ones that it happened on, for example. And then if you've made an a mistake, maybe we can we could let the vendor keep editing it until it's approved or something like that. We didn't really get that far, I guess. Now that it's brought up.
And then Andrea is asking, will they also be able to add them when they're posting their bills?
Add them when they're posting their bills. No, they would need to do it through the service. Like there would be nothing in billing that allows you to add non-services. It would need to be done in the service schedule like we're showing right now. And so Melissa, we had this complicated conversation and I can't remember how it goes. After you've posted and sent, that's when you wouldn't be able to add more non-services, right? But
I'm not sure what you're asking, posted and sent.
so after you've already sent bills for, say, this specific service of service staff and these service events, then weren't we talking about how we would have to stop vendors and agents from being able to add non-services more after the fact, or can they? I can't remember if there was like
I thought that I didn't think we talked about limiting that at all in the non-service side.
But so then if you've posted it and then they've approved it and then they add a non-service, you know what I
We
mean?
don't
Like,
know that they've even billed for that yet, right? Especially depending on the type of event.
oh yeah, unless we added the validation. I just didn't know if that was going to be chaotic errors.
Yeah, I don't know how we'd build that. I mean, we could do it so you could prevent the other way around, like they're waiting for a batch to be approved and trying to put a non-service in that month and service combo and prevent that. We could do that.
Okay, I think we would have to. 'Cause we wouldn't want those coming in late and then agents approving things that there's, they're adding non-services to.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll figure that out, but we'd make sure you can't do wonky stuff if that answers the question.
You had the earlier question though about if they think that the vendors could delete non-services that they posted after approved.
Oh yeah. You guys think that's necessary or no? I'm hoping.
I would be against allowing the vendors to delete non-service events.
Good. That makes it easier, but if anyone thinks they really need to, now's the time to speak up. Okay, good. That's easier. So,
Emily, this is Cindy from Region 8. Are you planning on having, on the Compass, I'm trying to think, the selector screen, like a line that says non-service so that people could click on non-service to go to it for those people who have approval, and there would be a managed users line for non-service now? I'm trying to visualize how this all kind of comes together.
I'm not gonna lie, you kind of lost me in your description. Can you say that one more
So
time?
when you go into Compass and you've got the navigator and you're going to have vendor maintenance and you've got, everything else, are you going to have a non-service line there now for this? And that we would give permissions to people that would have access to non-service information? I'm just trying to visualize where, now that it's not in vendor billing, it's like, how does this really happen?
Sorry. So we are in the service schedule right now. So we're on that left side when you're talking about, you would click on the service schedule and that's where all the service events are and where non-services are added, seen, and used. And so Melissa and I were talking, we don't have a mock-up of the notification that would alert you that there are non-services to be approved here because we couldn't decide yet on where we thought it was more appropriate to put. We're talking about in the dashboard, we're talking about a little number like you see for ADT, CCD notifications on when there's new ones on the left side, but in the service schedule area. so we haven't really come up with exactly where we would alert you, but it'd be something at that, top level, so you know that there are non-services to approve. Otherwise, you guys would just be adding them yourself like normal in the service schedule, and there's nothing, there's no separate land to do that. So this screenshot, if you're looking at the agenda where it has all the calendars, that's 2 different screenshots, just showing the difference of when it's yellow for when the vendor added it, and red when it's been either approved or added by an agent user. And so that's a screenshot of the service schedule, but you cannot see on the right side. I've just done the calendar just to make it a little bit easier to see. This is where that service def little grid is, where it shows all the information on the service definition. And then on the top, it shows you all your service defs. Like, those are older screenshots. If you go to old agendas, you can see the full UI there, but I've just kind of done a little part of it just so you can see what we were talking about with non-services. So I'm sorry, I can understand that you would not know where we are at right now. And so then if you click on those events, you can look at this in a day, week, or month view. This is the month view. So if you click on that little line, which would be bigger if you're in the week or day view, then there's a service event pop-up, which we've talked about on some previous calls, and it's got like the units, the tasks, all that information. Then on that pop-up, there's a little button that has like a drop down that says add non-service or add exception, or like some different actions that are available for each service event. And so then those 3 ones at the top here that I've got that are different versions of the non-service pop-up, that's what you would see when you're adding the non-service versus approving the non-service versus just pulling up an existing non-service and editing it or deleting it. Does that clear it up?
Yes, it is. I think I might email you after the meeting with some questions as I think about it.
I can send you some mock-ups of which area I'm talking about too. We just didn't, and we kind of like zoomed in past that part, I guess, if that makes sense.
No, you helped a lot. Thanks.
Okay. But so it sounds like we're on board with this, and this would be okay, because if so, that's great. And I'll move on. Oh, well, it's 5 minutes too. Maybe I won't. Okay. Well, I think we're going to keep going forward with that. I'm just going to say this other little note. Post conversion, we're saying it'd be important to review your service events that maybe need to be split up into multiple shifts, because if they're still just combined into one where there's 8 units instead of 4 and 4 for day and night, then you wouldn't be able to post non-services against each different shift if you wanted to. And so that's just an optional thing that is more up to you if you want to do. We just wanted to mention. So with 4 minutes, I'm definitely going to save bill reclaim for next call, because that'll probably be a conversation. And then the billing conversion note too, that's not a big deal. Actually, I'm just going to mention that because it's literally just about the non-services. Again, it's saying we're converting bills, vendor bills and bills from MySys for service dates after 1/1/2012, but then also due to the non-service changes, if non-service posted in vendor billing are not reviewed yet, then we're not going to convert them. And so obviously you don't really even want to think about this at this point. We'll probably remind you again once we're actually at the point of release, but it's just letting you know that if you didn't have everything reviewed at the time of conversion, that you would have to re-add those non-services in manually. So, and then also just that we know that there's some kind of funky data out there, some older bills that are posted but never sent in a batch. And so they're kind of in this like no man's land, and we'll probably want to provide some reports and do some cleanup ourselves to help get that ready before we convert. And so that's kind of, something for the way future, but just wanted to mention. Melissa and I also talked, we might want to switch to the twice a month calls again, because there's just so much to go over lately, and we want to move on to probably talking about reports soon. We're not sure how we're going to structure that. We might just do small group, since it's kind of difficult to talk about really specific reporting at a full group call level. And we just want to see based on what we still have left on the docket. And so we'll email you guys about that if we do end up wanting to bump up the frequency or not. I just wanted to mention that it's a possibility. Thank you everyone so much for participating. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.